Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on ST Live. It is the start of a new week, and the eyes of the world are very much on Ukraine. Here are the key developments. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to punish those who committed atrocities in Ukraine. He is calling on the West to do more for Ukraine, saying sanctions against Russia are not enough. He is also asking for more aid, such as planes and anti-aircraft missiles. But his demand for NATO countries to implement a no-fly zone on Ukraine have so far not been met. NATO warning that imposing a no-fly zone could provoke a full-fledged war in Europe with Russia. Meanwhile, Ukrainian towns continue to come under heavy shelling by Russian troops. Residents of a town on the outskirts of Kyiv have seen intense fighting in recent days and were forced to leave their burning homes with very few of their precious belongings. Over in Mariupol, buses are lined up and ready to take civilians away from the besieged southern city. But on Sunday, a second attempt to start evacuating an estimated 200,000 people out of the city came to a halt after reports of Russian bombardment. It has been 12 days since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Dr. Samir Puri from the International Institute of Strategic Studies joins us now with the latest on Russia's military strategy. Samir, good to have you with us again today. A short while ago, the British Ministry of Defense released its latest intelligence report, speculating that Russian forces made minimal ground advances over the weekend. What do you make of that speculation?
Well, we're in 11 days into this Russian offensive, and something that it's lacked is rapid, tangible gains for the Russians. And that has really now been replaced by what seems very tragically to be a sledgehammer tactic of bombing cities into submission, having already surrounded them. And in terms of the UK Ministry of Defence updates, they're providing a publicly accessible way of understanding the bigger picture of the battlefield. But the battlefield covers so many different parts of Ukraine. Russia's progress is quite uneven depending on where you look. Something I'd distinguish is Russia's progress in the south from what it had already occupied in Crimea in 2014, the Crimean Peninsula. Its offensive from the south has actually been a bit quicker. Its offensive towards Kyiv, the capital, has been a lot slower, and we still have those photographs of the long line of Russian military vehicles that don't seem to have moved for several days so far.
And speaking of Kyiv, can you speak more on what's the tactic there to take Kyiv?
Well, at the moment, it would appear that the Russians are focusing their attention, this is on the footage you just played, on a small town called Irpin, which is located quite close to Hostomel Airport, which was the focus of a daring but failed Russian airborne offensive on the first day of the war. The Russians clearly didn't take this approach to Kyiv, which is northwest of the capital, in the early days. They appear now to be trying to wear down whatever Ukrainian resistance, whatever Ukrainian front line exists to protect the capital. And one can only assume from this that the Russian armed forces are trying to break through, create an opening so that their convoy and the majority of their armed forces lined up to attack Kyiv can move forward. One final observation on this, which is that the Ukrainian road system is what the Russian military is using. That road system is actually pretty good. The highways were in very good quality before this war started. And even in the east of Ukraine, those Ukrainian highways, despite the conflict in East Ukraine that started 8 years ago, were still largely in quite good condition.
Now, there's been a high level of airstrikes on Ukrainian cities, and NATO is extremely reluctant to impose a no-fly zone. But tell us, is a no-fly zone executable? And for that matter, the jets that could possibly come from Poland?
Well, there's two different things here. One is a no-fly zone, and the other is possibly gifting Ukraine new fast jets via Poland, via countries at borders. The no-fly zone issue would appear to have huge escalatory potential. Very simply, a no-fly zone would mean that NATO warplanes, British, American, French, others, would be tasked in policing the skies over Ukraine and would be tasked, presumably, with engaging Russian jets, Russian aircraft as they try to conduct bombing missions. That is a recipe for aerial combat between NATO and the Russian Air Force, and the escalatory potential of that is potentially vast. Vladimir Putin has already said that any nation that seeks to interfere with his so-called special military operation in Ukraine would face retaliation. That's an open threat to escalate war to the level of a war between Russia and NATO if NATO intervenes. So I don't think a no-fly zone is going to be practical because it can't be isolated from possible escalation.
Now let's talk a bit more about Russia's state of play. And how do you think things might progress in the coming days or weeks?
It's really, again, as with all wars can take very unexpected turns. There's almost certainly going to be extremely uneven progress for both the Ukrainian and the Russian armed forces. And because the Russians attacked from so many different angles, it's very likely we'll see the Russians advance in some places and are blocked in others. And it could potentially be a very dynamic battlefield. Very quickly, it looks like the southern front is progressing better for the Russian armed forces. It may not even be the case with regards to Kyiv that the Russians ever get there. But something I'd like to draw the viewers' attention to is the east of Ukraine, where since those 8 years that have gone by, there has been a front line across what's known as the Donbass region or through the Donbass region. I'd expect there to be a bit more dynamism in the east and possibly an attempt by the Russians to block, to cut off whatever Ukrainian front line remains in the east of Ukraine.
Right, illuminating insights there. Thank you very much, Samir. Dr. Samir Puri from the International Institute of Strategic Studies. More Western businesses are cutting ties with Russia, with Netflix being the latest. The streaming service has suspended its service in Russia after saying last week that it would temporarily stop all future projects and acquisitions. American Express and top accounting firms KPMG and PwC also announced they are severing ties with Russia. Meanwhile, TikTok is suspending live streaming and uploading of videos to its platform in Russia. The Chinese-owned app says this will give it time to review the implications of a new media law signed on Friday by Russian President Vladimir Putin. And our coverage on the Ukraine crisis continues at stricttimes.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe to stay informed and activate the bell icon on YouTube to catch live news updates. I'm Lin Li Fu. Thanks for watching.